In the middle of the vast Pacific Ocean, a small research vessel named Oceanic Explorer cut through the calm waters. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden rays over the endless blue expanse. On board, Captain Ryan Carter stood at the helm, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. He was a man who had spent most of his life at sea, but today felt different. There was an unusual stillness in the air, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Behind him, marine biologist Lisa Bennett leaned against the railing, her notebook clutched tightly in one hand. She wasn't used to being out on the open water for long periods, but this expedition excited her. Her job was to study marine life, and she hoped to discover new species during their journey. Nearby, Eric Dawson, the ship's engineer, tinkered with a piece of equipment, muttering under his breath about faulty wiring. Though he came across as gruff, Eric was dependable, and everyone respected his expertise. The crew had been sailing for days without much to report when Megan Hayes, the communications officer, broke the silence. "Captain, you need to see this," she called out from the radar station. Her voice carried a hint of urgency that caught everyone's attention. Ryan walked over, his boots thudding softly against the deck. On the screen, a large object appeared just ahead of them, floating motionless in the water. "What is it?" Ryan asked, narrowing his eyes. "I'm not sure," Megan replied. "It's big, bigger than anything we've seen so far." Curiosity got the better of them, and Ryan ordered the ship to change course. As they approached, the object became clearer. It was a massive warship, its once proud frame now battered and rusted. The nameplate on its side read U.S. Valiant in faded letters. The sight sent a shiver down Lisa's spine. Something about the abandoned vessel felt wrong, almost unnatural. "Looks like no one's been here for years," Eric said, breaking the uneasy silence. He adjusted his cap and squinted at the hulking structure. "What do you think happened?" Ryan didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied the ship intently, his mind racing with questions. Why was it floating here, miles away from any known shipping routes? And why did it look like it had been through hell? "We should check it out," Lisa suggested hesitantly. She tried to sound confident, but her voice betrayed her unease. "It could be important." Eric shot her a skeptical glance. "Or dangerous. We don't know what's on that thing." Ryan weighed their options. Part of him agreed with Eric. It was risky to board an unknown ship. But another part of him couldn't ignore the opportunity. If the Valiant held valuable information or resources, reporting it could make headlines. After a moment of deliberation, he made up his mind. "We'll send a team aboard," he announced firmly. "Lisa, Eric, and Megan, you're with me." The decision sparked mixed reactions among the group. Lisa nodded eagerly, eager to uncover the mystery, while Eric sighed in frustration. Megan simply adjusted her headset, ready to document whatever they found. As they prepared to board the Valiant, none of them could have guessed what awaited them. The warship loomed ahead, its dark windows staring back like empty eyes. The closer they got, the heavier the atmosphere became, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. When they finally stepped onto the creaking deck, the smell of salt water and decay filled the air. Faint noises echoed through the corridors. Metal groaning, faint whispers that made the hairs on their necks stand on end. "This place gives me the creeps," Eric muttered, glancing around nervously. Ryan ignored him and led the way deeper into the ship. Every step felt deliberate, as though the Valiant itself was watching them. In the dim light, Lisa noticed strange symbols etched into the walls, too precise to be random damage. She pointed them out to Megan, who quickly snapped photos. For now, the team focused on gathering clues. Little did they know, the answers they sought would come at a terrible cost. The team moved cautiously through the shadowy corridors of the U.S. Valiant, their footsteps echoing loudly against the metal floor. The air inside was thick and stale, carrying the faint smell of rust and something else, something harder to place. Ryan led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as he scanned their surroundings. Behind him, Lisa clutched her notebook tightly, jotting down details about the ship's condition, while trying not to let her nerves show. Eric followed close behind, muttering under his breath about how this whole thing felt like a bad idea. Megan brought up the rear, holding her camera steady as she filmed every corner they passed. The further they went, the more unsettling the ship became. Old posters hung crookedly on the walls, faded with time, but still legible enough to reveal propaganda from another era. One poster read, "Strength through Unity," though the words seemed hollow in the eerie silence. Dust covered everything, forming thick layers that muffled their movements. But despite its abandoned state, there were signs that someone, or something, had been here recently. Footprints marred the dust in places, too fresh to belong to the ship's long-gone crew. "This is weird," Eric said finally, breaking the tense quiet. "Why would anyone leave all this stuff behind? Even if they abandoned the ship, wouldn't they take tools or supplies?" Ryan didn't respond immediately. He stopped near a closed door, his hand resting on the handle. "Maybe they didn't have a choice," he said after a pause. With a firm tug, he pulled the door open, revealing a small room filled with crates and shelves. Most of the items inside were useless. Broken equipment, empty bottles. But one shelf caught Lisa's eye. On it sat several journals bound in cracked leather, their pages yellowed with age. "These might tell us what happened," Lisa said, reaching for the nearest journal. She flipped it open carefully, scanning the cramped handwriting. The entries described experiments conducted on a crew, testing new technologies meant to enhance human abilities. At first glance, it sounded like standard military research, but certain phrases stood out: uncontrollable aggression, loss of self, and the entity grows stronger. "What does that mean?" Megan asked, peering over Lisa's shoulder. Her voice had an edge of concern. "I don't know yet," Lisa admitted, frowning. "But it doesn't sound good." As they continued exploring, strange noises began to fill the air. Metal creaking, distant thuds, and faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Each sound made them jump, their flashlights darting toward every shadow. Eric kept glancing over his shoulder, convinced they were being watched. Even Ryan, usually calm under pressure, looked uneasy. Then, without warning, the ship lurched violently beneath their feet. Everyone stumbled, grabbing onto whatever they could find to stay upright. Lights flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows across the walls. For a moment, it felt like the entire vessel was alive, shifting and groaning around them. "What the hell was that?" Eric shouted, his face pale. No one answered. They stared at each other, fear creeping into their expressions. Whatever they had stepped into, it wasn't just an old, forgotten warship anymore. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "We need to keep moving," Ryan said firmly, though his voice betrayed a hint of doubt. He gestured for the group to follow him deeper into the ship. Reluctantly, they obeyed, their steps slower now, weighed down by growing dread. It wasn't long before they found themselves in what appeared to be the control room. Panels lined the walls, covered in dials and switches that hadn't been touched in decades. In the center of the room stood a large console, its surface cracked and darkened with age. But unlike the rest of the ship, this area seemed different, cleaner somehow, as if someone had recently cleaned it. Lisa approached the console cautiously, her eyes widening as she noticed faint traces of condensation on its surface. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "How can this part of the ship still feel active?" Before anyone could respond, the intercom crackled to life. Static filled the room, followed by a distorted voice repeating the same phrase over and over: "Release me." The team froze, their hearts pounding. No one dared to speak. Whatever had brought them here, it was clear now. They weren't alone. The crackling voice over the intercom sent chills down their spines. "Release me," it repeated, the words distorted and hollow, like they were being spoken from far away, or from somewhere deep within the ship itself. Ryan was the first to react. his hand instinctively reaching for the console as if he could shut off the sound. But no matter how many switches he flipped or buttons he pressed, the voice continued, growing louder with each repetition. "What is that?" Megan whispered, her camera trembling in her hands. She had stopped filming, too shaken to focus on anything but the eerie message echoing through the room. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, his voice tight with frustration. He glanced at the others, searching for answers none of them had. "But we need to figure it out, fast." Lisa stepped closer to the console, her eyes scanning its surface for clues. The faint condensation she'd noticed earlier seemed even more pronounced now, almost as if the machine were breathing. Her fingers hovered above a small panel, hesitant to touch it. "There's something here," she said softly. "Something controlling this system." Eric scoffed, though his usual sarcasm lacked its usual bite. "Yeah, great. A ghost ship with a grudge. Just what we needed." Despite his attempt at humor, the tension in the room was palpable. None of them wanted to admit it, but they all felt the same creeping dread. Something wasn't right about the Valiant, and the longer they stayed, the worse it seemed to get. Ryan turned back to the group, his expression grim. "We can't stay here. Whatever this thing is, it's dangerous. We'll grab whatever we can carry and head back to the Explorer." No one argued. They began gathering items quickly: journals, tools, anything that might help them understand what had happened on the ship. As they worked, Lisa noticed a hidden compartment beneath one of the control panels. It was small, barely noticeable unless you were looking closely. She knelt down and pried it open, revealing several vials filled with a strange, glowing liquid. "Guys, look at this," she called out, holding up one of the vials. The substance inside shimmered faintly, pulsing like it had a life of its own. Megan moved closer, filming the discovery. "What is that?" "Some kind of chemical." "I think it's part of Project Nemesis," Lisa replied, pointing to a label etched into the side of the compartment. "That's what the journals mentioned. It sounds like some sort of experiment gone wrong." Before anyone could respond, the ship groaned loudly, tilting slightly to one side. Everyone stumbled, grabbing onto nearby surfaces to steady themselves. The lights flickered again, plunging the room into near darkness before snapping back on. When they did, the temperature dropped noticeably, sending shivers through the group. "This place is falling apart," Eric muttered, gripping a nearby railing. "If we don't leave soon, we're not getting out." Ryan nodded, his decision clear. "Let's go. Now." They started toward the exit, but as they reached the doorway, the intercom crackled once more. This time, the voice was clearer, more commanding. "You will release me," it growled, low and menacing. Lisa froze, clutching the vials tightly. "It knows we're here." "Then let's not stick around to chat," Eric snapped, pushing past her. His bravado was cracking, fear showing through his tough exterior. As they hurried back through the corridors, the ship seemed to fight them every step of the way. Doors slammed shut without warning, forcing them to find alternate routes. Shadows danced along the walls, too fast to be natural. The whispers returned, louder now, overlapping in a chaotic jumble of voices that made it hard to think. When they finally reached the deck, the relief was short-lived. The Oceanic Explorer was still anchored nearby, but the distance between the two ships felt impossibly vast. Dark clouds had gathered overhead, and the calm sea they'd left behind now churned violently, as if mirroring the chaos aboard the Valiant. Ryan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Stay close," he ordered. "We're not safe yet." But even as they prepared to leave, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Somewhere deep within the ship, the entity stirred, waiting patiently for its next move. The journey back to the Oceanic Explorer felt like an eternity. Each step across the Valiant's deck was heavier than the last, as if the ship itself didn't want to let them go. The wind had picked up, whipping around them, and making it hard to keep their balance. Waves crashed against the hull of both ships, spraying icy water into the air. Lisa clutched the vials tightly in her hand, afraid to drop them, but also unsure why she'd even brought them along. Eric stayed close behind her, his eyes darting nervously toward the shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally long despite the dim light. As they prepared to board the smaller vessel, Megan stopped suddenly, her camera aimed at something on the horizon. "Do you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ryan turned sharply, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. At first, he saw nothing but the endless expanse of water. Then, a faint glow appeared beneath the surface, a pulsating light that matched the eerie shimmer of the liquid in the vials. It moved slowly, deliberately, as though it were alive. "What is that thing?" Eric whispered, his usual bravado replaced by raw fear. No one answered. They watched in stunned silence as the light grew brighter, illuminating shapes moving just below the waves. Fins? Tentacles? None of them could tell for sure, but whatever it wasn't natural. "We need to leave now," Ryan barked, snapping everyone out of their trance. He grabbed a rope ladder and began climbing down to the Oceanic Explorer *, urging the others to follow. Lisa hesitated, glancing back at the Valiant one last time. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were abandoning something far more dangerous than they realized. Once aboard the smaller ship, they wasted no time pulling anchor and starting the engine. The roar of the motor was almost comforting compared to the unnatural sounds coming from the warship. But as they put distance between themselves and the Valiant, the glowing light beneath the water began to chase them. It surged forward, faster than any marine creature should be able to move, its presence marked by ripples and flashes just below the surface. "It's following us," Megan cried, pointing frantically at the water. Ryan gripped the wheel tightly, pushing the throttle further. The Oceanic Explorer * sped ahead, but the light kept pace, never straying too far behind. Lisa stared at the vials in her hands, her mind racing. Whatever Project Nemesis was, it wasn't confined to the ship. It was alive, or at least part of it was, and it wanted something from them. Back inside the cabin, tensions boiled over. Eric slammed his fist against the wall, his frustration spilling out. "This is your fault," he shouted at Lisa. "If you hadn't taken those damn vials, maybe it wouldn't be chasing us." Lisa flinched but held her ground. "I didn't know this would happen," she shot back. "We don't even understand what we're dealing with." "She's right," Megan interjected, her voice calmer but still tense. "Fighting won't help us. We need to figure out how to stop it." Ryan remained silent, his focus entirely on navigating the stormy waters. His knuckles were white from gripping the wheel so tightly, his jaw clenched in concentration. Despite his outward composure, he couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in his gut. This wasn't just bad luck, it was retaliation. Suddenly, the glowing light surged upward, breaking the surface in a violent burst. A massive shape emerged, a writhing mass of metal and flesh, fused together in grotesque harmony. Its form shifted constantly, impossible to fully comprehend, but one thing was clear: it was angry. The entity let out a deafening screech, the sound reverberating through the air and rattling the windows of the cabin. "Hold on," Ryan yelled as the creature lunged toward the ship. Its impact sent shockwaves through the water, nearly capsizing the Oceanic Explorer *. Everyone stumbled, grabbing onto anything solid to stay upright. Lisa scrambled to her feet, clutching the vials desperately. "It wants these," she shouted over the chaos. "Maybe if we throw them overboard, it'll leave us alone." "No way," Eric snapped. "That stuff could kill us all if it spills." But Ryan didn't hesitate. He made a split-second decision, steering the ship closer to the glowing mass. "Do it," he ordered Lisa. "Now." With shaking hands, Lisa hurled the vials into the water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entity let out another ear-splitting scream before diving back beneath the waves, dragging the glowing light with it. The churning sea slowly calmed, leaving only the sound of rain tapping against the deck. For now, they were safe, but none of them believed it would last. The storm passed as quickly as it had arrived, leaving the ocean eerily calm once again. The Oceanic Explorer drifted quietly on the surface, its engine idling as if even the ship itself was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, the crew sat in silence, their faces pale and drawn from exhaustion and fear. No one spoke for a long time. They simply stared at each other, trying to process what had just happened. Lisa broke the silence first, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think it's really gone?" Ryan leaned back against the wall, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His usual confidence seemed to have vanished, replaced by uncertainty. "I don't know," he admitted, "but throwing those vials overboard bought us some time. At least I hope it did." Eric shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "That thing wasn't natural. Whatever it is, it's not going to just disappear because we got rid of the glowing juice." Megan nodded slowly, replaying the footage she'd captured during their escape. On the small screen, the monstrous entity loomed large, its shifting form both mesmerizing and horrifying. "We need to figure out what it wants," she said finally, "and why it reacted to the vials." Lisa sighed, rubbing her temples. "From what I read in those journals, Project Nemesis was supposed to enhance human abilities, strength, speed, reflexes, but something went wrong. The experiments, they fused people with machines, turning them into monsters. And now it's loose," Eric muttered bitterly. "Thanks to us." Ryan shot him a sharp look. "Enough. Pointing fingers won't fix this. We're all in this together, whether we like it or not." The tension in the room was thick, but no one argued further. They knew Ryan was right. Their survival depended on working together, even if trust between them was beginning to fray. As the hours passed, the initial panic gave way to a restless unease. None of them could sleep, so they took turns keeping watch while the others tried to rest. Lisa volunteered for the first shift, sitting alone on the deck with her thoughts swirling endlessly. She couldn't stop thinking about the journals and the warnings scrawled in frantic handwriting. It grows stronger. What did that mean? Was the entity still out there, waiting for another chance to strike? Her musings were interrupted when Megan joined her outside. The communications officer held her camera close, as if it offered some kind of protection. "Can't sleep either?" Megan asked softly, sitting down beside her. Lisa shook her head. "Too much on my mind." Megan hesitated before speaking again. "Do you think anyone else knows about the Valiant? About Project Nemesis?" "Maybe," Lisa replied. "But if they do, they've done a good job of hiding it. That ship has been out here for decades, forgotten by everyone except—" She trailed off, unsure how to finish the thought. "Except whatever made it come alive again," Megan finished for her. Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to continue. "What if the entity isn't just tied to the Valiant? What if it can spread?" The idea sent a chill down Lisa's spine. If the entity could infect other ships, or worse, land, it would be catastrophic. They needed answers, but finding them felt impossible without risking their lives again. Back inside the cabin, Eric fiddled with the radio, attempting to establish contact with the mainland. Static filled the airwaves, broken only by faint bursts of noise that sounded almost like voices. Frustrated, he slammed his fist against the device. "This thing's useless," he snapped. Ryan stepped in, placing a calming hand on Eric's shoulder. "Take it easy. We'll find a way to reach someone. Until then, we stay alert." But staying alert didn't make them feel any safer. As dawn approached, the horizon remained empty, offering no sign of rescue or relief. The vastness of the ocean, once beautiful, now felt suffocating, a reminder of how isolated they truly were. Unbeknownst to them, beneath the waves, the glowing light reappeared, faint but steady. It moved slowly this time, as though biding its time. The entity wasn't gone. It was merely waiting. And when it returned, it would be stronger than ever. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting golden light across the water, the crew of the Oceanic Explorer tried to focus on practical tasks. They cleaned up the mess left by their chaotic escape from the Valiant, checked the ship's systems for damage, and rationed their remaining supplies. But despite their efforts to stay busy, an unshakable sense of dread lingered over them. Every splash of a wave or creak of the deck made them jump, their nerves stretched thin. Lisa sat at the small table in the cabin, poring over the journal she'd salvaged from the warship. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages, searching for answers. The entries grew darker toward the end, filled with desperate pleas and warnings. One phrase kept repeating itself: "It learns. It adapts." Lisa frowned, underlining the words with a pen. Whatever the entity was, it wasn't just mindless destruction, it was intelligent. Megan hovered nearby, watching Lisa work. "Anything useful?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with hope. "Not really," Lisa admitted, closing the journal with a sigh. "Just more proof that we're dealing with something far beyond us. These people, they didn't stand a chance." Eric entered the cabin, his face grim. He'd been inspecting the engine room and didn't look pleased with what he'd found. "We've got problems," he announced, dropping a wrench onto the table. "The impact from that thing damaged the propeller. We can still move, but not fast. If it comes back, we won't be able to outrun it." Ryan, who had been standing by the window, turned sharply. "How long will it take to fix?" "At least a day, if we have the right tools," Eric replied. "And even then, I'm not promising miracles." The weight of his words settled heavily on the group. Without a fully functional ship, they were sitting ducks in the middle of the ocean. Ryan clenched his fists, frustration evident in his expression. "We'll manage," he said finally, though his tone lacked conviction. "For now, let's focus on staying alert." Later that afternoon, Megan noticed something strange while reviewing her footage. She rewound the video of the entity's attack, freezing the frame where its shifting form was most visible. Zooming in, she gasped. Embedded within the mass of metal and flesh were fragments of human faces, eyes wide with terror, mouths frozen in silent screams. "What is it?" Lisa asked, noticing Megan's reaction. Megan hesitated before showing her the screen. "Look closer," she whispered. "Do you see them?" Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she realized what she was looking at. "They're people," she murmured. "Or what's left of them." The discovery sent shockwaves through the group. If the entity consumed humans, or fused with them, then escaping might not be enough. Stopping it would require understanding how it operated, which meant confronting the truth about Project Nemesis. That night, tensions reached a breaking point. Exhaustion and fear had worn everyone down, and tempers flared easily. During dinner, Eric accused Ryan of leading them into danger without considering the consequences. "You only care about fame and glory," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "If you hadn't pushed us to board that damned ship, none of this would have happened." Ryan stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Enough," he barked. "I made a call, yes, but we're all here because of choices we made. Pointing fingers won't save us." Lisa stepped between them, her voice firm. "Stop it, both of you. Arguing isn't helping. We need to work together if we want to survive." Her words silenced the room, but the anger simmered beneath the surface. Trust was slipping away, replaced by suspicion and blame. Hours later, as the others tried to sleep, Megan stayed awake, monitoring the radar. A faint blip appeared on the screen, moving steadily toward their location. At first, she thought it was debris, but then it changed direction, heading straight for the Oceanic Explorer *. Her heart raced as she grabbed the radio, attempting to raise someone. Anyone, on the other end. Static greeted her once again. "It's coming back," she whispered to herself, clutching the edge of the console. Outside, The glowing light emerged from the depths, brighter and larger than before. This time, there was no mistaking its intent. The entity had returned, and it was angrier than ever. The glowing light beneath the waves grew brighter with each passing second, pulsating like a heartbeat. Megan's hands trembled as she frantically tried to wake the others. "It's here," she shouted, her voice cracking under the strain of panic. One by one, the crew stumbled out of their bunks, bleary-eyed but instantly alert when they saw the entity rising from the ocean. Ryan rushed to the helm, gripping the wheel tightly. "Start the engine," he ordered, his voice sharp and commanding despite the fear in his eyes. Eric didn't argue this time. He bolted below deck to fire up the damaged propeller, muttering curses under his breath. Lisa and Megan stayed on the main deck, watching as the monstrous shape broke the surface once more. This time, the entity was different. Its mass had grown larger, its form even more grotesque. A chaotic fusion of metal shards, writhing tendrils, and distorted human features. The faces embedded within it twisted in silent agony, their hollow eyes seeming to lock onto the Oceanic Explorer *. A low hum filled the air, vibrating through the ship and rattling everyone's bones. "It's bigger," Lisa whispered, clutching the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. "It's stronger." The ship lurched violently as the entity slammed into the hull, sending everyone stumbling. Water sprayed over the sides, soaking them all. Ryan fought to keep control of the wheel, but the damaged propeller sputtered weakly, unable to provide enough power for a quick escape. "We're not going anywhere," Eric yelled from below deck, his voice tinged with desperation. The engines barely holding together. Megan grabbed her camera instinctively, filming the creature as it loomed closer. "What does it want?" she cried, her voice shaking. "Why won't it leave us alone?" "It wants the vials," Lisa said suddenly, realization dawning on her face. "Even though we threw them overboard, it knows we have information about Project Nemesis. It thinks we can bring it back, or make it stronger." Ryan cursed under his breath. "Then we give it what it wants." "Lisa, tell me how to stop this thing." Lisa hesitated, her mind racing. She flipped through the journals again, searching for anything that might help. Then she found it. A single line scrawled in bold letters. "Core system shutdown disables integration." Her heart pounded as she read the words aloud. "We need to shut down whatever controls the entity. There must be a central system keeping it alive." "Where?" Ryan demanded, his voice urgent. "The Valiant," Lisa replied. "It has to be there." For a moment, no one spoke. Returning to the warship felt like signing their death warrants, but staying put meant certain doom. The entity struck again, smashing against the side of the ship with enough force to crack the hull. Water began seeping in, pooling at their feet. "We don't have a choice," Ryan said finally, his jaw clenched. "Get ready to move." They scrambled to gather supplies, knowing they wouldn't survive long without them. Eric patched up the worst of the leaks as best he could, buying them a little more time. Meanwhile, Lisa stuffed the journals into a waterproof bag, determined not to lose their only clues. When they reached the deck, the entity hovered just a few yards away, its glow casting an eerie light over the scene. It seemed to be waiting, studying them with an intelligence that sent shivers down their spines. Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "Let's go," he said grimly. "And stay close. If we separate, we're dead." One by one, they climbed onto the rope ladder leading down to the lifeboat. The cold water splashed against their legs as they rowed toward the looming silhouette of the Valiant. Each stroke felt heavier than the last, weighed down by dread. When they finally reached the warship, the air felt colder, thicker, like stepping into a nightmare. As they climbed aboard, the whispers returned, louder now, overlapping in a chaotic symphony. The ship groaned around them, almost as if it were alive. Lisa led the way, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as she guided them deeper into the belly of the beast. "This place is a tomb," Eric muttered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. It's also our only chance, Lisa replied firmly. If we can find the core system, we might still have a shot. But as they ventured further inside, the entity's presence grew stronger. Shadows moved where there should have been none, and faint laughter echoed through the corridors. They weren't alone, and the entity knew exactly where they were going. The deeper they went into the U.S. Valiant, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air seemed to grow heavier with each step, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. Lisa's flashlight flickered occasionally, forcing her to tap it against her palm to keep it working. Behind her, Eric held a crowbar tightly, ready to defend the group if needed. Megan stayed close to Ryan, clutching her camera, as if it could somehow ward off the growing dread. "This place feels wrong," Megan whispered, her voice barely audible over the constant groaning of the ship. "It's like it knows we're here." "It probably does," Ryan replied grimly, his eyes scanning the dark corridors. He kept his hand near the knife strapped to his belt, though he doubted it would do much against whatever was hunting them. Lisa led the way, using the journals as a guide. According to the notes, the core system controlling the entity was located in the engine room, a massive chamber deep within the bowels of the ship. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The path was littered with obstacles, collapsed walls, twisted metal beams, and doors sealed shut by rust, or something far less natural. As they navigated the maze-like halls, strange noises echoed around them. Metal scraping against metal, faint whispers that seemed to come from all directions, and the occasional thud of something heavy moving just out of sight. Every sound made them flinch, their nerves stretched to the breaking point. Finally, they reached a large door marked Engine Room. It was partially open, revealing a dimly lit space beyond. Lisa hesitated before stepping inside, her heart pounding. The others followed cautiously, their flashlights sweeping across the room. What they saw left them speechless. At the center of the chamber stood a towering structure, a pulsating mass of wires, circuits, and glowing panels. It hummed with energy, casting an otherworldly light that filled the room. Embedded within the machinery were fragments of human remains, bones, teeth, and scraps of flesh fused seamlessly with the technology. The sight was horrifying, yet impossible to look away from. "This is it," Lisa said softly, her voice trembling. "This is the core system." Eric stepped forward, gripping the crowbar tighter. "So what now? Smash it?" "No," Lisa snapped, grabbing his arm to stop him. "We don't know what will happen if we destroy it. We need to shut it down properly." She pulled out one of the journals, flipping through the pages frantically. Her hand shook as she searched for instructions, but the text was cryptic, written in shorthand only someone familiar with the project could understand. Frustration bubbled up inside her. "I can't figure it out," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I don't know how to turn it off." Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness for a split second. When they came back on, the entity was there. It loomed at the edge of the chamber, its form shifting constantly. Tendrils of metal snaked outward, reaching for them. The faces embedded within it twisted in silent screams, their hollow eyes fixed on the intruders. A low, guttural growl filled the room, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. "Move," Ryan shouted, pushing the group toward the control panel. "Find a way to shut it down." Lisa scrambled to the console, her fingers flying over the buttons and switches. Nothing happened. The entity advanced slowly, deliberately, its movements fluid and unnatural. Eric swung the crowbar wildly, trying to keep it at bay, but the weapon passed harmlessly through its form. "You're wasting time," Ryan yelled, pulling Lisa aside. "Do something." Tears streamed down Lisa's face as she tried again, this time focusing on a single lever labeled Emergency Shutdown. She yanked it down with all her strength. The machine let out a deafening screech, sparks flying as the core began to power down. The entity recoiled, its shape writhing in agony. But it wasn't done yet. With a final, desperate lunge, it reached out, wrapping a tendril around Eric's leg. He screamed as it dragged him toward the collapsing mass of machinery. Ryan and Megan grabbed his arms, pulling with everything they had. "Let go," Eric shouted, his voice filled with terror. "Save yourselves." "No," Ryan roared, refusing to release him. With one last effort, they managed to pull Eric free, stumbling backward as the core exploded in a burst of light and heat. When the chaos subsided, the room fell silent. The entity was gone, or at least it seemed to be. The ship groaned around them, its structural integrity failing under the strain of the explosion. "We need to leave now," Ryan ordered, helping Eric to his feet. His leg was badly injured, but he could still walk. As they limped toward the exit, none of them dared to look back. The Valiant was dying, taking its secrets with it. But as they emerged onto the deck, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that the entity wasn't truly gone. It was merely waiting for another chance to rise again. The crew stumbled out onto the deck of the U.S. Valiant, their bodies battered and their minds reeling from what they had just witnessed. The ship groaned ominously around them, its metal frame buckling under the stress of the explosion in the engine room. Smoke billowed from vents and cracks in the walls, filling the air with a sharp, acrid smell. It was clear the warship wouldn't hold together much longer. Ryan took charge immediately, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to get off this thing now," he shouted, helping Eric, who was limping heavily. Blood seeped through the makeshift bandage Lisa had tied around his injured leg, but there was no time to tend to it properly. Survival came first. Megan led the way, her camera forgotten at her side, as she focused on finding the quickest route back to the lifeboat. The wooden vessel swayed gently in the water below, looking impossibly small compared to the hulking mass of the dying ship. Each step felt like a gamble. The deck beneath their feet creaked and shifted, threatening to collapse at any moment. Lisa brought up the rear, glancing over her shoulder constantly. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being washed, that something was still alive within the crumbling ruins of the Valiant. The whispers had stopped, but the silence felt heavier, almost suffocating. Her hands tightened around the strap of the waterproof bag containing the journals, determined not to let go of their only clues about Project Nemesis. When they finally reached the edge of the deck, Ryan lowered the rope ladder hastily, testing its strength before signaling for the others to climb down. Eric went first, gritting his teeth against the pain in his leg. Megan followed, her movements quick despite her exhaustion. Lisa hesitated, staring back at the dark corridors behind her. "Come on," Ryan urged, his tone firm but tinged with urgency. "There's nothing left here worth staying for." Reluctantly, Lisa nodded and began her descent. As she climbed down, the ship shuddered violently, tilting slightly to one side. A loud metallic groan echoed through the air, sending a fresh wave of panic through the group. They scrambled into the lifeboat as fast as they could, pushing away from the Valiant just as another explosion rocked the hull. From a safe distance, they watched in stunned silence as the warship sank beneath the waves. Flames licked at the surface briefly before being swallowed by the ocean, leaving only ripples in its wake. For a moment, the world seemed eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. Eric slumped against the side of the lifeboat, wincing in pain. "Is it over?" he asked, his voice hoarse. No one answered right away. Ryan stared at the spot where the Valiant had disappeared, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know, but we're alive. For now." Lisa clutched the bag of journals tightly, her mind racing. Despite everything they'd been through, she couldn't shake the feeling that the entity wasn't truly gone. It had been connected to the core system, yes, but what if parts of it remained? What if it could rebuild itself, or find a new host? Megan broke the somber mood by pointing toward the horizon. "Look," she exclaimed weakly. In the distance, the faint outline of a ship appeared, likely passing through the area by chance. Relief washed over them, though it was tempered by the knowledge that they would have to explain what had happened and decide how much to reveal. As they rowed toward the approaching vessel, none of them spoke. The weight of their ordeal hung heavy between them, unspoken but understood. They had survived the Valiant, but the cost of their escape was etched deeply into each of them. Later, as they rested aboard the rescue ship, Lisa opened one of the journals again, scanning the pages for answers. Buried near the end, she found a single sentence that sent chills down her spine. Once awakened, it cannot be fully destroyed. Her heart sank. Whatever they had faced, whatever they thought they had defeated, it wasn't over. And deep down, she knew it would never stop hunting them. Weeks passed since their rescue, and life began to settle into an uneasy routine for the survivors. The crew of the Oceanic Explorer had been questioned extensively by authorities about the mysterious warship and their harrowing escape. Ryan, Lisa, Megan, and Eric stuck to a simple story. They'd encountered an abandoned vessel, faced mechanical failures, and narrowly survived a storm. They left out the glowing vials, the journals, and the monstrous entity. How could they even begin to explain something so unbelievable? Despite their efforts to move on, none of them could fully escape the shadow of the U.S. Valiant. Nightmares plagued their sleep, filled with writhing metal forms and hollow-eyed faces screaming silently. During the day, they avoided talking about it, pretending everything was fine. But the truth lingered, buried beneath forced smiles and quiet meals. Lisa returned to her quiet apartment, seeking solace in the familiar comforts of her books and research papers. Yet, no matter how hard she tried to distract herself, the journals from the Valiant haunted her thoughts. She spent hours poring over them, searching for answers, or at least some way to make sense of what they'd faced. One evening, as she sat at her desk, a knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Megan standing there, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. "This arrived for me today," Megan said quietly, handing it over. "But I think it's meant for you." Confused, Lisa took the package and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was one of the vials from Project Nemesis, its contents still glowing faintly. A folded note lay beside it, bearing a single sentence written in neat block letters. "It's not over." Her blood ran cold. Where did this come from? She demanded, clutching the vial tightly. Megan shook her head. "No return address, just my name on the label." Her voice trembled slightly. "What does it mean, Lisa? Is it back?" Lisa didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the vial, her mind racing. If someone, or something, had sent this, it meant the entity hadn't been destroyed. It was still out there, watching, waiting. And now, it seemed to know where they lived. "We can't keep ignoring this," Lisa said finally, her voice firm despite the fear creeping into her chest. "If we don't figure out how to stop it, it'll come for us again. And next time, we might not be so lucky." Megan nodded slowly. "What do we do?" "Find help," Lisa replied without hesitation. "Someone who knows more about Project Nemesis. Someone who can understand what we're dealing with." The two women decided to reach out to Eric and Ryan, knowing they couldn't face whatever came next alone. When they met up, the tension between them was palpable. Old arguments and mistrust lingered, but the threat of the entity forced them to set aside their differences, for now. Together, they began piecing together clues from the journals and researching anything related to Project Nemesis. Late nights turned into early mornings as they scored archives, contacted experts, and followed leads that led nowhere. But just when hope seemed lost, Lisa stumbled upon a name buried deep within the notes. Dr. Helen Carter, a scientist who had worked on the project before disappearing under mysterious circumstances. "She might know something," Lisa said, showing the others a faded photograph of the woman. "If we can find her." Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "And if we can't, then we're on our own," Lisa admitted grimly. "But sitting around won't save us." As they prepared to track down Dr. Carter, strange things started happening again. Lights flickered in Lisa's apartment. Eric reported hearing whispers in his workshop late at night. Megan received anonymous calls with nothing but static on the line. Each incident served as a chilling reminder. The entity wasn't done with them. One evening, as Lisa stared at the glowing vial on her desk, she realized the truth. The Valiant may have sunk, but the entity had found a new way to survive, in pieces scattered across the world, carried unknowingly by those who had escaped. It was growing stronger, biding its time, and sooner or later it would strike again.